Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Northwoods Kindred Podcast. I'm Bodvarr, the chieftain and Gothi of the Northwoods. And today, my special guest is the middle child. This is my son, Leif.
My name is Leif Williams. So I'm, of course, the middle child with two older brothers, a younger brother and a younger sister.
Right.
And I mean, as of right now, I'm the only one who is out of the house. Got my own place all hooked up.
Well, David's out, but
he is, yeah.
He's kind of on his own, doing his own thing right now.
But at the very least, it's set up with very nice plans for the future. It's really nice.
Cool.
So I'm enjoying my place.
I thought it's really cool to have Leif on because he's basically living the life that a lot of us dreamed we had, and that is that he was born into a kindred. He was never exposed to the white Christ. He was never a part of that world. He doesn't know it. I don't know. We'll get into all of that later. But the idea is that Leif was when we first got sort of hooked up with the Gjallarhorn kindred. At that time, Skogul was pregnant, and she was pregnant with this one, and so his first bloat that he ever attended was in Mama's belly, and then he was born, and then he was on her hip. On her hip, yeah.
And that was the second gathering of Gjallarhorn that the family went to, and then the third gathering I was born, so I was already out.
Well, it was the second, but it was the third gathering because I went to one without you guys.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Because I don't know back in the day you couldn't vet people the way you could now, and I knew that I had contacted the guy and he seemed pretty cool during email and everything, but what do I know? About
you don't want to bring the whole family there if you don't know this guy's good or not. So
yeah, my whole family and my pregnant wife, I'm going to drag you, 2 hours away to meet a bunch of who knows whats. So, you know what I mean? So I went alone. And, we find that same thing echoed a lot here because when we meet people for the first time, they're like, oh, my family had something going on, so it's just going to be me. I know what's going on.
Yeah.
I know what's going on. They're vetting us, and that's perfectly acceptable because I do the same damn thing.
Yeah, honestly, It's a good sign. It's a good sign to see a man or a woman so humble that they want to keep their family protected and just go out and vet on their own terms, and then just report back the next day or the week after. Like I said, it's really something nice to see.
It's really almost a good first check in the box because it's like that's what we want to see. We want to see people who want to protect their families and they don't want to get mixed up in a bunch of weird racial shit or segregational shit,
Yeah.
They don't want to get mixed up in it, but like I know I can roll through the door and I can handle myself, right, in the room.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't handle myself if I'm worried about what's happening with my daughter and my son and my wife, So so that's definitely a check in the box for us.
Yeah,
for sure.
Especially if you haven't seen the house before. I've been to a couple of houses, and some of them have like roaches and other bugs and stuff like that littered around the place. And though I don't have a kid, I would definitely not want to bring my son or daughter there.
Right, you don't want to bring that stuff home,
not.
yeah.
So, come back home with lice or something.
Yeah, it happens, but some people are victims of their own circumstance, but you certainly don't want to introduce your family to anything like that, any pests or anything that could be, a detriment to the health of your own household. So I'm sure that your own land spirits and house spirits wouldn't appreciate that very much.
Absolutely, yeah. Whether it be physical pests or pests of the mind, it's always good to go ahead and vet by yourself.
Right on.
And be clear.
So, I would assume that growing up that most of your friends were Christian, right? You probably didn't have many pagan
A good
friends.
chunk, yeah.
Did you have any pagan friends? Like
honestly,
Wicca
not really.
Not
really much.
Mm-hmm.
And I never really confronted it much whenever I was younger. I kind of just kept it to myself. And there was only a couple close friends and whatnot that I had that I would have come over to the house. And they would end up seeing something like the þórr or other decorations, stuff like that around the house. Be like, oh, what's that? It's like, oh, well, we're Asatru. So, but anyway, we'd have them, come over to the house and they would see, a shield on the wall and such.
Yeah.
And they would kind of pester me like, oh, that's kind of cool, but what is that? That's finally when I would be open and honest about it and actually tell them, like what I really am. When I was much younger, I was much more. Yeah, right. When I was what I really am. So, but yeah, when I was much younger, I was a little bit more shut in. For the people who knew me, merely a couple years ago, I was just a shy kid, always shut in my room.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even really like hunting much. I would just play games, whatever, do my own thing. And it wasn't until I actually went out and kind of experienced the world by myself, and I went to Cascades Job Corps Career and College Academy out by myself for a couple years.
That's over on the coast of Washington. It's by Sedro-Woolley, right?
Yeah, it's up at Sedro-Woolley. It's about 2 hours north of Seattle.
Yeah, so that should kind of put it into perspective somewhere. So it's still Pacific Northwest.
It is.
Still beautiful up there, but it's a little more farmy, I think, a little more open, it felt like.
Yeah, it really was.
A little less like wooded and treed, but...
Yeah, and I stayed up there for a good time, and I kind of got to have my first taste and real experience of being out of the home, and experiencing life.
Yeah, for real.
Though I was still young at the time, so I couldn't do much like go off campus when I first started, but that came in time, that privilege, once I hit 18.
Oh, right.
And I was able to go do my own thing, catch the bus in Sedro-Woolley, go around. And that was really about the time when I started being open about who I really was in my faith.
Did you find any other like pagans there? Because you were for doing computer science stuff, right? Like video game development and stuff.
So it was, funnily enough, it's called the God Classroom. It's GAWD, Game App and Web Development.
Okay.
So, but yeah, I was in the God class. So that's kind of funny. A little bit of a synchronicity, I guess. Yeah. But I didn't find many heathen fellows up there.
No.
Most of them were just, if they were heathen, they were very shut in, and we didn't talk much.
Which is pretty common. It's a common theme that you see anyway.
Especially amongst younger folk.
And I see a lot of shut-in heathens. I mean, there's a million different reasons why, but I see them to kind of lump into two main categories. One is that they don't know a lot, and they're kind of... So they stay withdrawn and they try not to mention it because they're afraid people might ask them questions and probe their intellect about whatever topic they supposedly honor.
Yeah.
And the other one is just straight. They've just experienced too much stuff because they're pagans or heathens,
Yeah, they've gotten flack for it in the past.
Yeah.
And I mean, like me, myself, I like to think of myself as more of an observer.
Yeah.
I mean, nowadays, not so much. I'll go into Winco with a full kilt and garb, and it doesn't really bother me.
Yeah.
And people come up and ask me all kinds of shit. But yeah, before. So, yeah. Anywho, yeah, that was a good time ago, though.
Yeah, so that's kind of the curious thing for me is to know. Of course, I know the answer to a lot of these questions, but they don't. I'm kind of curious how it was when you were younger. Mm-hmm. Like around the time when Herger was coming over, and when you were in elementary school.
Yeah.
What were those times like? Because I know at school you would have had like Valentine's Day and Christmas and all that shit that we don't do. We do it our own way with a different name and stuff.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I didn't even use the lingo. Like I didn't call it Yule, I didn't call it Ostara and whatnot when I was at school. I had done it before, but either you get a lot of flack or you get a lot of questions. And for me, I was an observer, as I said before. So I just both didn't know how to approach those topics because I just wasn't well informed enough. Mm-hmm. And I also just didn't want to be judged, being younger and whatnot. I was kind of the outcast, you could say. Everyone else is, Christian fellow or...
Yeah, and I always remember you being a relatively shy child anyway and very kept in. Not timid at all, just sort of like reserved and kind of kept a pretty even mannerism across the board. Like even when you were upset, I always remember you were kind of like not that upset. You were always just kind of even keeled. So,
I will say though, I was always a hammer out kid. I wasn't shy about that. I wasn't shy about showing my hammer.
That's a fact. I'll confirm that.
Some people would ask me about it, and I just tell them it's my hammer. Like, it's my amulet.
Yeah.
I wear it around. I'm Asatru. Though I didn't really know how to, speak for myself when I was younger. Like I said, I just wasn't well informed enough. Even growing up in a kindred, you're still a kid. I mean, you're still running around, playing kickball out in the field.
Right.
Or the adults are hanging out in the Vey, doing some sort of blessing.
Yeah, because it was you and Ian and, all of Hawkins' kids and then all of our kids and any other kids that happened to be coming over. And we'd have a little axe throwing and bow shooting. And
oh, yeah, axe throwing was very fun. Yeah, did that a couple times.
And Ian, which is kind of sort of between you and David. He's the counterpart between you two, and he just made fire captain.
He did, yes.
Which is very weird for me. Because
so if you're watching this, Ian, congratulations. I haven't been able to call you yet.
Yeah, congrats.
So that is really good news to hear. I had heard it just yesterday. But anyway, yeah, Ian, he's kind of in between David and I, and he is our little counterbalance.
Yeah. And it's cool. I mean, even with him being a pagan, grew up and now he's a steward. Like now he takes care of the forest in a different way. You know, he
does.
Puts out fires and does that kind of stuff. He's a desk jockey now, but
you got to work for that.
That's why I was busting his ass about it yesterday. I was calling him a desk jockey. I was like, oh, you're not going to get any more helos? Nope, you're not going to be putting out any more fires. You're just going to be signing paychecks and scheduling.
Captain duty. I'm just supervising over here. Don't worry about me.
Yeah. So that's kind of funny because just seeing you guys all as little babies, and now you're all grown men, and you're all kind of going out and building your own lives, and none of you have ever turned away from the gods for a second.
Actually, there was one time. It wasn't, mind you, it wasn't. You'll know. You might actually remember once I bring it up, but there was a time, and I believe it was actually in. Like I said, it really wasn't that long, but it was between the car ride of when we were moving from Mississippi to Idaho for the first time.
Okay.
It was during that ride that it was actually David and I in the back. We were playing with the flute, and we wanted to try and be Buddhists.
Nice.
So we tried meditating in the back of the car and hanging out. It only lasted like 3 days or so. You know, it wasn't until we got our feet back on the land and we were actually hanging out back in the woods again that we were like, nah, we're Asatru. Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. But we dabbled in it for a pinch, and I mean, being Asatru, like. As I said, like I grew up with it 100%, but it was never something that was forced upon me or anything. I mean, you and Mom both made it very clear when we were younger, like it's okay if you guys want to change to something else, because a lot of folks just get bullied for it.
Oh yeah.
So,
well, we know people even here, their parents are just like religious zealots, and they're like, "Don't you dare ever think
been
about
called
straying away from church."
Devil a couple times. So,
yeah,
but
yeah.
Now what can you do?
So I'm curious because, like, of course you didn't see any racism or any of that crap because we kept you guys all pretty insulated from that stuff. Of course, being on a military base, it wasn't very prominent anyway. Mm-hmm. And then being Gallahorn Kindred, of course, we didn't have any of that. We didn't tolerate any of that garbage. Yeah. But since you became Asatru, or since you're Asatru out in public as a grown-up, have you experienced any, like, interactions where people either thought you were racist or where you ran into the racial types and they kind of categorized you?
Honestly, neither. Never had either one of those. I think it's really just about how you present yourself.
Hammer out. I mean,
hammer out, arm guard. I do the whole thing. And I really think it's just about how you present yourself. Because even when nobody comes up to me and they ask me, like, what is this all about? Are you just doing cosplay or something like that? I still like to be an upstanding and just respectful citizen. Right. So, I'll walk around Winco in the crowded aisle, and I'll walk past someone like, oh, excuse me real quick. Oh, you can go first. Like, go ahead. And just being humble and kind, it really kind of offsets people at the start because they're like, whoa, what's this guy?
Because they think you're like a D&D dickhead, and you're just going to barge in there like a badass Viking and be mean to people and be like, get out of my way, Valhalla, Skål. So,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And, some people, I don't blame them because they've had those bad experiences.
And those experiences, those are out there. Spokane's got all types.
Absolutely. So, but yeah, I mean, so long as you're just really humble and kind, and you do your best to not only be a good heathen, but just an outstanding and decent citizen.
Yeah.
Then,
that's
you're really
important, and
marks.
that might actually be a part of heathenry that's overlooked a lot. Is the whole idea that we're still citizens of the United States or wherever we're at.
Absolutely.
We're still citizens of our town and our county, and we should probably treat our fellow citizens with respect. We know that we're talking to Christians, but unless that's part of the conversation, then there isn't any reason to make that the priority, right? Mm-hmm. Just be nice to people because people are going through shit, Yeah, even that person that bumped into you in an aisle, they're probably going through some stuff, We don't know what happened. We don't know what kind of drama they got with their wife and kids and their life and their job, and maybe the car just broke down and they could barely keep it running to get to work. We just don't know their circumstance, and you being a dick doesn't help.
Yeah, I mean, I've had it a couple times. Just being nice to folks. Walking through the store. I tell them, go ahead. Being kind and all. And then they come find me afterwards. I'm 4 aisles down and whatnot, and they're like, I'd seen you back there. I was just curious what you're all about. But I remembered them. I remembered seeing them. So right. I told them, like, go ahead. You can go past me, whatever. Do your thing. Of course, I'm not going to let anybody step on me because I'm not that person. But everyone has their buttons, right?
Right. Yeah, that's a fact.
So, but yeah, you meet a lot of really nice folk that way. It's much better just to help educate than it is to just belittle and break someone down. I mean, some of those folks are already broken down and they just need to be built back up.
You're right. Some of them are at the end of it. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, they're just busted down and sick of getting busted down.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you can tell because they're the ones they just walk around the store with their head down, and maybe they bumped into you because they're so broken, and they're just not even looking where they're just.
Yeah, they're just not paying attention. Yeah. They're out there because they have to be out there.
Yeah. And while those aren't our fellow Asatru, they are our fellow humans. Right. And they deserve some level of respect. I mean, you can't be a religious bigot because that's what we try to rise up against, right?
Absolutely.
Is that religious bigotry. Like, they hate us because we're pagan, but we don't have to hate them back. We can treat them with a little bit of kindness and respect, and it maybe, possibly, at least in some small cases, turn the tides for paganry instead of against it. We can turn the tides for Asatru, and they're like, I don't know, I've only met one person who was Asatru, and that person was pretty cool to me, even knowing that I was a Jehovah's Witness or whatever,
Yeah.
So I keep saying Jehovah's. I did it in the last one too. I use that term a lot. It's kind of on my head because I have a really good friend, a close friend, who's very, very kind and generous to me when I first came here, and he was a Jehovah's Witness.
Okay.
And he just recently died. So it's kind of, in my own head, I'm kind of like giving him a thumbs up, but I realize how it sounds to other people is like I got some beef with
I just got some beef with them, but no,
I don't at all.
So.
I don't at all. It just kind of happened that way. I thought I needed to explain it because I'm not in favor of any kind of like religious bigotry. Like, just because they're a
Absolutely
Catholic,
not.
I treat people like they treat me. And if they treat me like I'm a scumbag because I don't honor the same gods as them, rather than treat them like crap because I'm not that person either, I would rather just cut them out.
Yeah,
if
agreed.
you happen to own this place and you treat me like crap because I don't pray to the same God as you, then you don't get my patronage.
Agreed.
I'll go buy from that other Christian who treats me like a human being first.
Yeah.
Because I really think that if we all did that a little bit instead of focusing on our consumerism, like, I want it, they're the only ones that got it, I'm going to take the abuse just so I can buy this. No, I'll get it from somewhere else, or I'll make it myself or something else. But kind of getting a little deep in the weeds on that one. But
I was going to say, it's also just because we're a Heimdall kindred. We kind of like building our own stuff, working with our hands.
Yeah, we always have. So anyway, what are we doing today, as a matter of fact?
Well, right now we're actually building up our shields. Some of us had brought bosses, so we're building them from the ground up, doing painting, everything like that. We had a newcomer, Jack, come in, and he brought his axe. We sharpened it up, tuned up the handle really nice. I brought my axe. I was planning to work on the sheath, but I think I'm having too much fun socializing.
Yeah.
So.
And the shield. We always get some kind of semi-complicated craft, and then we forgot that we haven't seen each other in a month. In some cases.
Yep. So
and
kind of happens
like,
that way.
We just sit around eating snacks and.
I was gonna say, and not only that, but I mean, we like to eat in the Northwoods, so
yeah, we do.
We take some time to bake the goods and get all the appetizers and the feast ready. I mean, some of those roasts are cooking for hours and hours, so you got to prep them in advance.
Yeah.
So, absolutely.
So a little bit more on your experience. So when you were at Cedro Woolley, then you said there weren't a lot of other pagan kids there, if any.
Really not, no.
Or at least not open enough to mention it to you. But you being Hammer Out, did you get any flack from the other kids? Because I'm sure there must have been like some kids from like super religious, intolerant households.
Actually, no. I think that's just partly because the campus kind of weeded out those kind of people who were really confrontational. But most of the people who saw that I was Hammer Out they would ask me about it, and then they'd call me a Nord because they're all nerds, so they play Skyrim, so that's what they would call me.
Oh, you're a Nord?
They'd call me the Nord. And that was kind of the whole thing, and it was a joke amongst my group of friends. So,
yeah.
You know, you had Norsemen in the Marines, and I had Nord over on campus.
Yeah, and even in high school, all of your gamer friends, I just called you guys all your nerd crew
Geeks.
or your nerd group. So it wasn't bad. I mean, own it, right?
Hey, man, I like
all
being
a bunch
a geek.
of nerds. And
So, jeez.
Yeah, it wasn't a bad thing. It wasn't nefarious. It was just a descriptor.
So, but yeah, we never had any sort of confrontation or anything over there. There was this one lady that I did meet, and she was on the campus. I think she was a druid.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if she was something like actually like full trying to cosplay, but she would kind of like, it was weird. She would speak in like riddles almost, and she would always talk about like the forest creatures and stuff like that. And she brought a wooden walking stick that was essentially just a branch, like it wasn't dollied up or nothing. And she would bring it with her everywhere. I mean, into the cafeteria, into the classrooms. She had her walking stick.
Was she a student or a staff?
She was a student.
Yeah.
So I only got to talk to her, maybe just a handful of times. I never really got to.
So was she there for
Was
she there for the tech side of it, or was she there for the medical side of it? Because they also trained like medical nurses and stuff there, right?
Yeah.
I think it's a weird combination on one campus, but
it is, and they actually used to have culinary as well.
Oh, really?
I wanted to do it, but they don't have it anymore, unfortunately.
Ah, cool.
So, but regardless, I never got to ask her about it, and she was actually she was on the medical side.
Okay.
So that was kind of part of it.
So she's druid and she's going to be a healer?
Yeah, interesting.
Makes
right?
sense, don't it?
So, what can you do?
Yeah, right.
Do your thing. But
so you said you never really come across any racist types, and I find that I did a lot, like early on, like really early '90s, and I didn't really know much about Asatru, and I'd never even actually heard it said out loud. I used to call it Asatru.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I pronounced it. It was Asatru.
Yeah, because you just typed it up on Google just looking for it, right?
It wasn't even Google. It was Ask Jeeves. I don't know if Google existed.
Yeah, right. There you go.
It was like way long time ago.
Yeah.
I mean, you had some chat groups and some bulletin boards, and there was a little bit of an internet presence at that time, but there wasn't like, and we had Viking Answer Lady a little bit later on anyway, and she always had good information.
Okay.
But there wasn't like there is now. Like, you're so overwhelmed with just bad information now. Good information just looks like a landmine.
It really does, yeah.
There's no way to really tell anymore unless you like really dive in and buy some old paper books. And
I was gonna say unless you pick up a good book, then.
But then you didn't even know what books to have. Like, you didn't know what Viking books to have or what was useful. We'd all end up with like Ed Fitch's Rights of Odin or something, and it's like, wow, this is trashy. Like, what is this garbage? But it's all we could find. It's all that we could have. And then a few other authors, New Age authors, with like the whole Wicca-true type of vibe.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of different kinds of Wicca books. I want to say I have 2 of them. I can't remember the names of them off the top of my head. But,
yeah. Well,
you kind of just collect them along the way. Find them at Goodwill and whatnot. It's
And
oh, interesting. I wonder if it's a good book.
It's worth a read, right?
Grab it real quick, I mean, even just to... I guess you could say read the sour side. There are some pretty bad books out there, but Ragnar had a saying, and it was that there's never a bad book. It doesn't exist, because even the worst books tells you what not to do, and there's knowledge to be had in that.
Right. Yeah.
So it's always good to go through Goodwill, find those books, just grab them real quick, maybe sift through them,
Yeah.
But.
Yeah, and sometimes I'll just look at like Amazon reviews, and I know it's going to have 4.5 stars, but it's 4.5 stars from a bunch of 14-year-olds who don't really know what's going on anyway. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I'll buy them anyway. And one of those books that I bought was Diana Paxton's Essential Asatru. And I didn't know anything about Diana Paxton. I still don't really, but I know we have a couple of mutual acquaintances in the community because we've both been around for a long time. But her book, Essential Asatru, I read through it and I thought, I don't know anything about this woman, but somehow or another, our influences in the past, whatever influenced us, came from the same source, somewhere. Because the book was written in sort of a format where each chapter begins with like a little bit of a sort of a scenario from a random gathering, like a summel or something like that.
That's cool.
So it kind of like develops the scenario, and then it goes into a little bit more detail about the practice or whatever. So each chapter is like a little piece of a gathering. And as I'm reading these chapters, I'm like, that sounds like the way we do it. That sounds like the way we do it. That's a little different, but that's a little the same, And
wow, that's
so you can
really
see
nice.
that a lot of things merged in. So I've talked to some people, and some people are like, she's a little bit kooky, but she's not a racist or anything.
Yeah,
she's
not a bad person.
Yeah,
but...
she's a good person. Just sometimes personalities don't exactly align. So I know people that know her and mutual acquaintances, and some are fond of her, and some could live with her without her, but nobody says anything bad about her really. So I can confidently recommend the book, especially for people that are very new and they haven't experienced a lifetime of community and kindred and that kind of a situation.
Yeah.
Then that's kind of a real cool look at it. At least enough to where you have a little bit of situational awareness. So if you have an opportunity to attend some kind of a group and it's like really, really weird and strange, at least you in your head know that there's something else out there. Mm-hmm. It's not always weird and strange. It's just these people are weird and strange.
Yeah.
So you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You can't say all kindreds are crap because this kindred's crap. You know what I mean? You can be like...
sometimes you just got to get your feet wet.
Yeah.
And that was, just to harken back to what we were talking about from the start, that's part of going out on your own without your family and just going and vetting kindreds and stuff like that by yourself. And sometimes it's unfortunate and it takes a long time for you to realize that these are sour people.
Mm-hmm. They have a lifetime of learning how to hide their bigotry and
with some people, absolutely.
But I don't know why. Like, if you're gonna be a bigot, be an open bigot. You know what I mean? So I get that sometimes too. Like, people try to pin all kinds of shit on us, make us all kind of phobes and all kinds of stuff. It's like, if that was us, we're open and honest enough to be honest about it. Mm-hmm. There's a side of the fence over there too. We would just be on that side of the fence with a bunch of other people who agree with us.
Yeah.
But instead, we're here on this side of the fence, or not to the far left or the right. We're just kind of easing down the middle, right? We're kind of very much a mind your own tribe sort of mindset.
Yeah, honestly, every situation is different. Yeah. I feel like we don't even tend to stay in the middle. It's just like a windy path, and sometimes it's just random. And that's, I guess you could say, part of the fun.
I had a big exchange on TikTok once where they were calling me a transphobe, I think it was. My own niece is a trans.
Yeah.
So, and I'm certainly not afraid of her. We're family.
Yeah,
and we grew up.
Talks to us and we'll chat with her.
Yeah,
either way, it's simple.
Either way, it's just people being ignorant and being branding people. But I always found it sort of weird to me. It's like, why do you think? So we'll just play out a little role play here, and we'll say that I am the big bigot, and you are whatever I'm racial or bigotry against. So whatever it is I hate, you're that, okay? And I'm the hater. Now, would it make any sense that I'm going to spend so much time and effort and energy convincing you that I don't hate you if I don't fucking like you, right? Why would I bother?
Yeah,
why don't I just say, you don't matter to me, go away? You are what I say you are. Get away from me, you don't matter. Instead of being like, no, I don't dislike you. And they're like, oh, that guy's a dork. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make any sense that I would put energy into protecting your feelings or pretending like I'm an ally when I'm not. It just doesn't make any sense.
It's a cruel game to try and play it like that.
Yeah. So I've gotten to the point where when those kind of slanderous accusations come out, I am just done, gone, banned for life. Like, I don't even want to try and convince people that, because you can't. The problem is, by the time somebody comes out and says you are this, they have made up their mind, and there is no changing their mind. You couldn't do anything. You couldn't do anything to change anybody's mind at that state. They've made it up. It's solid. Who cares what you say?
Or
you could say something against them, and they'll hang on every word of it. If you say something in your favor, it's all lies. So it's like, why are you choosing to believe half of what I say, or why do you?
Yeah, just it's totally situational, and I feel like just for some people, you're just not the right person to tell them.
Yeah.
So you just kind of leave them to the weeds, and eventually they'll find that right person in their life. Hopefully, anyway. Mm-hmm. Fingers crossed.
Right.
But
yeah.
What can you do?
That's a good way to look at it, though. You're not the right person to tell them. They need to know. And I have that like, I've done a lot of things, and I've met a lot of people, and I have a pretty wide knowledge. I don't know. jack of all trades kind of a thing, master of none, right? But I feel like there's an urge to just help people not fuck it up. Even if it doesn't affect me, it's like, hey, you're doing that wrong. I'd love to help you how to do it right. Yeah. And they're like, mind your own business. And it's like, what, you want to just keep messing shit up?
You want to just keep doing it wrong?
So I personally have a hard time reeling myself in because I really just want to help people. I just want to stop them from breaking their shit. And,
absolutely agree.
But I very, very, very quickly am learning that nobody wants to be. They want to experience it. They want to fail and they want to learn. And, I do too. Because when people tell me that that's going to get it messed up, whether I can see it or not, sometimes I just want to test it. I'd be like, it probably will break, but I'm going to do it anyway. Because it's mine and it's my right, So I guess what's good for the goose is good for the gander, right? So I just need to mind my own damn business.
That's a good saying, yeah.
So mind your own
good
practice.
Good for the goose
right?
is good for the gander.
Mind your own
Never
practice.
Heard that. Yeah.
And I find that it's frustrating for me because I'm a teacher. Most of my Marine Corps career, I've either been deployed or in training or working at a school. So for 20 years, I worked at all various different types of schools, teaching lots of people brand new skills that they've never seen before that I had earned to a mastery level, right? So it was a real cool dynamic. But in the classroom, it's like, hey, try it this way, or do it this way. We don't have time for you to make 7 mistakes. You have to do it right, do it the way I said.
Absolutely.
And then when you go home and do it on your unit, you can screw it up all you want, right? So I kind of brought that whole mindset with me, and it's like, hey, dude, you're doing it wrong. And they're like, hey, I don't care. Mind your own business. And I'm like, that's right. I do need to mind my own business. So that's something I had to learn early on with this whole public Asatru thing, because I'm like, that's going to get you in trouble. And they're like, mind your own business. Nobody asked you.
So, all right, I'll be here for the aftermath, you know.
It just took a while for me to learn how to mind my own damn business. So... yeah, because it was new. Like, we were Asatru forever, but this public Asatru thing is something different.
It really is. I mean, it's not like the same kind of publicity you get, as I said, just going into any sort of store with a kilt on and just chatting with folks. But I mean, like, you go online on YouTube and the Facebook and everything like that, and there's just so many people. There's so many people and so much knowledge getting thrown around.
Some of it completely false.
Some of
those people
absolutely.
Are just like the brosatrus they're only there to pick a fight because they are Viking and they're going to Valhalla. It's like, really, you're going to go to Valhalla?
It always hurts my soul to hear that. It always hurts.
You picked a fight with me on the internet. Welcome to Valhalla.
Oh man,
it's like, oh, come on. Read a book, man.
You meet those people, though. I mean, they're out there, especially.
They are, and it's not always bad, because I was pretty gung-ho Viking excited too when I first found the path. But when you get somebody and they're like, we're gonna feast and drink and die and go to Valhalla, and I have been Asatru for 23 years, and I'm like, bullshit. I'm calling your card. I'm calling your card, because that shit wears off after about 4 years.
Yeah. So, and you can see the absolute difference with, like, someone who says they've been Asatru for 20 odd years, but all they've really seen is like the Viking TV show, and they went to a couple of like Asatru Alliance gatherings or something like that.
Not even that, because that's a
maybe,
pretty big step.
Maybe. But I mean, not to, of course, toot my own horn, but for myself, I've been Asatru for 21 years, and it's been a slow growing kind of process. And there was a point in between where we had moved away from Gallahorn, so we didn't have that aspect, and we weren't the Northwoods. We were still Asatru, through and through, but we didn't have that dynamic of our kindred being right there and available to talk to.
And gatherings and worships, and we'd rarely have a bloat or any kind of a ceremony.
Yeah.
I mean, we always honored the gods in our home, but not with any sort of a ritual other than maybe a little altar in the corner or something, right?
Yeah. But that slow growth really, really develops character. And, speaking for myself, I mean, I wouldn't be nearly the man I am today if it wasn't for just being Asatru and having that community aspect amongst my kin. To be able to have, a good chunk of different mentors and other folks that I can go to ask about certain issues that I'm having.
Yeah, strong, reliable men that with a diverse background of experience that you can go to, and you can go to your uncles and be like, Uncle Hawken, how do I do this? And
whether that be something with a craft or something that I'm just like struggling with in my own life, it really develops character as a person.
Yeah. It's kind of reminiscent of the old like mentorship days too, where you would send your sons to go live with your brother or your wife's brother or something, so that the son could be raised by someone who has different experiences than the parent. For one, they weren't being babied.
Yeah.
Because the uncle's probably gonna be a little bit harder than the mom and dad.
Just gonna definitely treat them different. So,
and you get the benefit of experience from multiple different men, as opposed to just your own household and your own family and your own. Dare I say it, in the Viking Age, your own little bigoted views, because I'm sure that the household had, kind of preconceived notions about other people, but once you venture out into the world and you get to learn from other men, and build friends that are outside your own community and outside your own household, then you start to learn how to interpret other people's opinions and decide whether the way you were raised is the way you want to raise your next generation. And you don't get that by being a shut-in and internalizing every little thing that mommy and daddy says, right?
Yeah, and that slow growth is it's so important. It really is. And like for me, I developed a lot of confidence. Actually, I used to be very fearful of like public speaking and everything like that. And I think that was just because the in-between point between being away from Gjallarhorn and not being Northwoods. Like I was in choir whenever I was younger. I did it for 1 year in middle school, but I never ever went on stage. Never once. I always avoided it. Always came up with an excuse, and it's just because I never liked being in front of people. I was a bit of an introvert, and that's just how I am. But now being the Northwoods and having that development, it's once a month I come over here and I stand in front of my kin, and I raise a horn to Þórr or to Heimdall, and I speak from my heart. And it takes practice to do that.
It does. It really does. Yeah, it's not like a rehearsed thing. It's not like you're reading a script. But yeah, it does actually take practice to learn how to speak from your heart.
It does.
Yeah.
So, I started where everyone else started. Even growing up in a kindred, I would just walk up and say hail. Maybe pour out my mead if I didn't want it because I didn't like the taste of alcohol. Everyone has to start somewhere. And even being blessed enough to start out in something as great as Gjallarhorn, you still have to develop as a person. It's very slow going.
Yeah.
So
and there's conflicts too. I'm sure that you and Ian and Sam and you guys all had your little bicker fest.
Oh yeah, the knuckleheads. Yeah.
So, kids are kids and parents are parents, but I feel real fortunate. There's something about the people in Gjallarhorn. See, we called it, you might not even know as far as the history of Gjallarhorn goes, but when Gjallarhorn was started by Hawken and Thorin and Ragnar, they built the structure and then they started bringing in other people. They had cats and dogs and maybe some the occasional Wicketru, some weird people floated through the doors, and in time they all ended up washing out, and they ended up just like locking the door, kicking everybody out, and going back down to the base 3.
Yeah,
and then from there they basically closed it off, and they said, okay, this kindred thing doesn't work. What do we want? And they kind of designed exactly what they wanted, and they're like, we will not settle for anything less. And we are no longer looking for people.
Yeah.
And then no sooner did they get that done, and they get this random-ass email from some corporal in the Marine Corps, or maybe I was a sergeant at that time or whatever.
Yeah.
And I send this email, and of course, Hawken being who he is, he can't waste an opportunity to help somebody. So he just communicated with me. He never said anything about, hey, we're an open kindred or whatever. He just talked to me, and we had a communication like that. And then eventually we ended up obviously joining, but we've never had any beef. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Hawken and I have never been in an argument. We've never had a fight. We've never had anything. Hawken, Thorin, Aldolf, Dawn, Frithie, we've never had beef. Any of us.
Yeah.
And And I think that that's a pretty spectacular thing to have that such a diverse group. I mean, we stretch from Arizona now to Idaho, Southern California, New Jersey. We're across the whole country. Yeah. We come from such diversity. But when it comes to this, we're all in agreement that our kin always gets the benefit of the doubt. And I think that right there just solves all the problems.
You know, that's interesting that you bring that up, because I didn't realize it, but perhaps it's just in my blood. Being over at Job Corps, my close-knit group of friends, it was maybe like 12, 13 people. It was a good chunk of friends. But there was not a batch of 3 of us that were from the same cohort. So we were always from different cohorts, which is interesting for Job Corps. A lot of the people, they come in with like 20 people to a cohort, and then usually the cohort
I don't know what a
together.
cohort is.
So it's so for my Job Corps, it was twice a month there would be a group of 20 or some odd kids that would come in for IT, and they would do the 2 weeks of orientation before they get moved on to later classes, and then come in the next 20 or so students of medical, and it would just go back and forth. Of medical students, they would go through orientation, and then they would get sent off. And that collective is the cohort. So they all came in at the same time. They all did orientation together.
So that would be like your class, like your freshman class or your junior class or something.
Exact same thing.
Okay.
But pretty much every single cohort at the Job Corps I went to, they always stuck together. Of course, there were a couple outcasts and whatnot and stuff like that. But our group was enough to be an entire cohort, and there was never more than 2 of us that were actually from the same cohort, which is interesting, and it was completely diverse.
Yeah,
so like
cool.
Half of us were IT, the other half were medical, and all of us came in at different times. So that's interesting that you mentioned that. I totally had that aspect being over there.
I think when things like that don't work out, when you take a lot of random people from different places and you put them together and you say work together, for one, it helps that everybody wants to be there, whether we're talking about Job Corps or the Kindred.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
But the idea that everybody wants to be there is obviously important. But I think that you have to be humble enough to understand that other people have different experiences, and your experience doesn't rule the world. So
yeah, that's true.
Just because this is the way I believe something is, because this is the way I was programmed with my life experiences, yours are completely different. And and it's not only that I'm right and you're wrong. I'm right for me, and I'm wrong for you. Like, what you do is a reflection of your life, and there's no changing that.
Absolutely.
And if you can understand that, and if you can be kind of sympathetic to that, then you can just shut the hell up and let them have their voice. Right?
Yeah.
Or you can just stand back and let them do it their way. And then the only time you really need to intercede is if somebody's going to do something that's actually destructive or dangerous, to themselves or someone else.
Absolutely.
And it's like, I got to step in. You're about ready to lose a finger. So, I'll give you an awesome example too. Here's a really cool example. So I'm good with tools. I got a lot of tools, whatever.
Yeah.
So we're cutting shields out, and Jafnhar, they all know Jafnhar.
Yep.
Was cutting his shield out, and I know Jafnhar's been a roofer, like Jafnhar's in the trades, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm like, okay, I know what's about to happen. Does Jafnhar know what's about to happen? So he's cutting out his shield, and that chunk of because he's cutting it out round, and a chunk of that is getting kind of heavy, right? And it's gonna break because it's plywood, and he just goes right off to the side, releases it, and then goes right back to the cut. And that's the thing, because if he hadn't been handy with tools, he would have just kept on going until it broke off and potentially would have damaged the product that he's trying to cut out, right?
Yeah.
But I didn't want to be like, bro, you're about ready to... I was just like, let's see what Jafnhar knows. He doesn't need me to lean over his shoulder and coach him on everything. If he makes a mistake, he'll fix his mistake. And he'll learn that that you have to do a relief cut. So I was standing back watching, and I looked over, and Brody, who is an actual carpenter, was watching. We were both kind of watching and paying attention. We were both like
just sitting on the side.
So we had both come to the same
scratching your
conclusion.
chin.
There's a good chance that this guy knows what he's doing. Let's see what happens. You know what I mean?
That's so funny.
And he knew what he was doing, so he didn't need us to step in. But if I would have stepped in and said, hey, make sure you cut a relief cut before you do that, he'd been like, I know. everybody says, I know. I would have been like, yeah, he didn't know. And that's
Yeah.
me. That's just me being an asshole, right? So
Yeah, I
in a
guess
lot of
that's
cases,
true.
the asshole move, what it would feel like to me is to sit there and watch him mess up. The asshole move would have been to interrupt his own process. You know what I mean?
to step in, because
So,
I mean,
that's hard for me. Like, I have to learn how to do that.
I mean, you are a teacher. I mean,
I
you've
have
been
to
doing
learn
it
how
for
to do
20
that.
years, so.
And then on the internet, it's the same dynamic. You just mind your own damn practice. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm trying, guys. I'm trying to mind my own business. But I do like showing what we do because we got a really interesting crew here, you know?
Yeah, and well, you could definitely say it's diverse. It's getting up there, especially in numbers. So
Yeah. And numbers kind of go up and down, but
they do. They do fluctuate.
some people drift in for a moment and drift out. And, you know, there'll probably come a day where you'll have your own kindred over there in
time,
Spokane
yeah.
somewhere. You know, Chris has got his own kindred, but we're still a kindred, you know?
Yeah.
And you're still Gallarhorn, so you'd be a part of 3 kindreds, you know?
Well, 4.
What do we 4?
Well, at that point it would be 4 because I am also a part of Iron Ravens. I mean,
Shit, okay.
like I'm not, of course, like a voting member or anything like that. But I mean,
But
Chris and I have hashed it out. I was there for their first bloat.
You were there for that bloat under the maple tree on the lawn?
Yes, I was.
Damn it, I didn't know that happened.
It was so nice too. It was such a pretty spot.
Yeah, me and Chris were talking about it the other day, and I told him, I was like, one day I want to bloat under that spot. And he's like, yeah, we will one day. And then he comes out later that he'd already done it. And I was like, what are you talking about?
It was beautiful.
And you were there too?
Yep.
Bunch of traitors, man.
You should have showed up.
I guess I should have.
Yeah, had an excuse to go buy some meat on base or something like that.
I don't recall being invited.
So, but yeah, Chris had invited me and Ari out there.
Because you guys just lived down the road from the base, right?
Yeah, we were only 12 minutes away at the time.
Because that was before you moved?
Yeah, before we moved. But it was pretty... It's funny, he worded it, he's like, I want to make sure you guys are here so I don't fuck it up. Like, you guys can help me step by step. And I was like, yeah, we got you, man. Don't worry. We just want to be here. Like,
you did rune readings for his kindred then that time, didn't you?
I can't remember if it was actually that first time, but yes, there was a time that we did do some rune reading for him.
That's cool.
And like we ended up bringing it through.
You teach him a little class, a little bit about how to do it?
Yeah, a little bit about how the castings work and going through it. I got to do some private study with Chris because he wants to work it out himself as well and kind of learn all the aspects of the runes and whatnot.
So the little bits and pieces that we give him, he wants to try and rationalize them and codify them himself without too much of our. That's pretty cool. He doesn't want to do it our way. He wants to do it his way. That makes sense.
And I mean, especially with it being the base kindred. I mean, some of those folks are different. So him being the Gothi, he just needs to adapt it for his folk.
Yeah.
And that's totally understandable.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll teach him all that I know. Absolutely. So though I'm still learning, of course.
Yeah.
Vidkey in training.
Yeah, Vicky and training. Yeah, right on. Well, you got a good lineage too, because a lot of what I know about of course, I already knew about the runes, and I had a really good base knowledge of them anyway. But a lot of the more advanced stuff about how to really use them comes from þórr and his experiences that he's graciously shared with me. Which it's kind of a sticky subject for me because I get questions about the runes, but it's hard for me to untangle what's already out there from what þórr gave me, and I don't have permission to share, you know? Everything's so intertwined now, it's hard to just kind of tear them apart and be like, I can give this out, which will get everybody, 50% of the way there and give them a lot of stuff to work on and study and develop, but I don't want to step into the lines of giving away something that Sam earned and gave to me.
Absolutely. And so especially with the runes, the runes can be powerful.
Yeah.
And if people really know how to use them and they know how to apply them, then they know how to do it negatively too. And it just takes them being in an ill mind to really hurt someone.
Well, it's likely going to hurt themselves too, because my experience with the runes are always that there's a cost to pay, and you're going to pay the cost.
Gift for a gift.
Yeah.
It's the same
always.
Deal.
Yeah, so I'm kind of shy about showing any rune stuff, Yeah. At least anything more advanced than the basics that are already flooding the market anyway,
Yeah.
You got 24 Elder Futhark runes, and these are their names, and this is what they stand for, and this is their letter. And,
As you and Hakan were talking about, the
mysterious
blank rune.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The blank rune. So,
So
yeah, like even the names and the letters and stuff. Well, I get the letters, but even the names are, I think, subjective.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and especially the keywords. Like, I don't like runic keywords. I think that they're way too complex. That's like I mean, they're not complex. The keywords work if you understand the runes to a level. And I'll give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
An example would be Bodvarr. To everybody else, that's a keyword. It means, yeah, that's that dude. To you, you've got 21 years. You know me. That means a lot to you. That you know my temper and my craft and my personality and my home, and you know that keyword to a level that most people don't know.
Yeah, when I see Bodvarr inscribed on the back of like a shield or on the handle of his hammer, there's a lot more meaning in that to me than there would be for just some other person. They'd read it, it'd be like, is that someone's name?
Yeah. So would you be able to grab a piece of paper and write down what is Bodvarr? Then how do you write what is Fehu? How do you write what is Urus? You know, because if you don't understand it at that intimate level, then you don't understand it at all. Because just because somebody knows my name and they can put my name to my face doesn't mean they know Bodvarr. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Just because you can say this is Fehu, it's an F. It means cattle, wealth, portable riches, or whatever. That doesn't mean they know Fehu. You know what I mean? I don't know if that's the best way to explain it.
That just means they have a good memory. I mean, there should be some level of sacrifice to it.
There has to be meditation. There has to be thought. There's a give and take with each individual rune that can only be accomplished after years of work.
Absolutely. Same thing with developing friendships. Like it,
right?
I mean, it's a sacrifice of time, sometimes money, and other aspects of your own home.
Yeah.
And that same level of sacrifice needs to be brought into the runes as well, if you really want to.
Because you're essentially developing a relationship. The runes are representative of these natural forces that are living, breathing natural forces. Mm-hmm. And you're developing a relationship with it. And there's going to be biases, and there's going to be misinterpretations, and there's going to be things like, oh, I thought you were from Michigan. Oh, but you're from California. Okay, now I'm a little more clear here. Yeah. Just like meeting a new person and building a relationship with a person, you're going to be wrong on some things, and they're going to get clarification the better you get to know that person and the farther down the road you get. You can't pick up some jackass's book and read it and be like, I'm a rune master. I'm a viki now. I'm a viki. I'm going to start selling rune readings on the internet.
Yeah,
it
just doesn't work like that.
So just misses the point, you know?
Yeah. So, and I feel like, whenever you develop a relationship with a close friend and whatnot, to some extent, you know their past and everything like that. And when it comes to the runes, you could study just younger Futhark and elder Futhark, but if you keep going back into their lineage and studying other translations, what they were actually used for, and other aspects about it, then you can really develop the character of each rune, and learn just so much more about it.
And now, so that would explain why the runic characters have changed over the years. Mm-hmm. They've created new meanings as new experiences, new discoveries, new things. The consciousness of the people has broadened, and they're more experienced more wider things. Now the language, the meta language of the runes has changed, which evolves the characters in the language, in the written language itself.
Yeah,
that's part of the road that I'm going down, and I don't want to give away that, but I think telling people that that's there to discover is probably a really good head start for those runers that are actually trying to learn the runes.
Absolutely.
It's a place to put some effort and realize that it's not a dead end, that it's a long, dark road. It feels like a dead end and you're going to bump into some shit, but it's a long, dark road.
It really is. I try and pull runes every morning, just to kind of, kickstart my day and kind of get a feel for what's going on. And oh man, just every time you pull them out, there's always something new that you kind of like click in your head, something that realizes, and you jot it down real quick.
Have you ever tried to predict your rune?
Yeah, actually a good handful of times.
Yeah.
A bunch of times. And a lot of the times I can nail it.
Yeah.
So there's a whole bunch of times.
It's weird, isn't it?
It really is. It's interesting. Or, sometimes, I'll have a specific plan or something like that that's going on this weekend, and I'll go to pull my rune. It's like, man, I could really use this weekend. And I pull out that specific rune that caters to what I'm needing.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, thank you. Thank you.
Right.
That's just what I needed. I needed that sense of clarity in my head to know that, there's someone else there.
It's cool that you do that, and I do that too. And I write them on my calendar.
Oh, yeah.
And I also write them in my journal. And now because if I pull a rune in the morning, and then I have a particular type of day, and then I record that in my journal with that rune, that's given me, that's that handshake. That's getting to know that rune. So if that rune is reminiscent of that day, I'm starting to develop that rune's personality.
Yeah,
and I'll know if I'm pulling Hagalaz, stay home because it's going to be a crappy day, and I'm going to have a, actually that's not necessarily true in the case of that rune, but people would read it that way, right?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, as we've spoken on before, there really isn't a bad rune. They all have their aspects, ups and downs, exactly.
Yeah, and so when you pull the runes like that and you record them, you're going to start developing a relationship with those runes. And I've pulled the same rune like 3 or 4 or 5 times in a row, and then it went to something else. And the whole, whatever the conflict was or the difficulty or whatever, it got solved, and then it went to something else. There's absolutely no doubt that you can't relate 5 days of pulling that same exact rune to whatever the issue was.
Yeah.
They're connected.
And sometimes, because I only pull 1 rune in the morning, pulling a dozen in the morning it's quite complex. Maybe I'll get to that level eventually.
It's unnecessary. I don't do that either.
One rune. But I've noticed some weeks it'll be back and forth between 2 runes.
Yeah, funny.
And and it's trying to tell me something like there's something going on with both of these. It's not just a one thing right now.
Right.
And it might take me a couple days to really have that realization, but then shut it down, make sure I got the notes all in check.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting because they'll go back and forth all the time.
Sometimes it's not about the rune; it's about the relationship between the runes.
Yeah.
Even like when you cast, because we don't do the all that weird
tarot stuff
where you lay out the Thor's hammer layout or the cross layout or the past, present, future layout. We grab a handful of runes and we drop them on the table, and then we read how they fell. Right.
Yeah.
And
that is the best way to learn the runes, is to just put your hand in the bag, drop it on the table. You're not going to hurt yourself by doing it because, I mean, you can only do as much damage with the runes that your knowledge can bear.
That's true.
If you don't know anything about the runes, you're not going to hurt anybody.
Right.
Just pull them out, throw them on the table, try and read them, understand the way they fell, what's going on with them, try and look for patterns. Stuff like that. And then when you kind of decoded it as best as you can, take 5 minutes to do it, gather them all up, throw them back in the bag, and do it again. Just recast.
And they have a tendency to work with you. So even if you're brand new at the runes and you could barely even understand the keywords, somehow or another what they tell you will make sense to you. It just works kind of like that.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's just the human mind, just being able to adapt it to their given situation. But sometimes that's what you need.
But I look at it this way. So if you're new to the runes, or even if some of these people have been doing the runes for 20 years and they're still completely blind to what they really are, to them it's still just fancy tarot card or whatever. Tarot chips instead, right?
Yeah.
But I look at it as when you're at that level, you're playing with a Nerf gun. And we can put on all the armor and all the gear we want, but we're still not going to hurt anybody. We're just going to be shooting Nerf guns at each other.
Yeah.
And maybe I get a little smidge of knowledge and I move up to an airsoft. And I get a little more knowledge and I move up to a BB gun, right?
Yeah.
And now I'm dangerous because I could actually put an eye out, right?
Yeah, if you know where to aim.
Yeah.
So long if you could focus that energy, you could absolutely hurt someone.
And then 22, da-da-da-da-da-da, next thing you know, you're throwing 50 cals and Mark 19 rounds downrange, So... but by the time you are a gunner on the top of a Humvee firing a 50 caliber machine gun, you've been trained. You know how to use it, right?
Absolutely.
You're not airsoft quality anymore. You may want to go do some airsoft shit on your day off, right? You might want to just go play airsoft.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think really the bottom line, the key takeaway with the runes is you can't be afraid to go experience them. And some people are like, oh, you can't don't play with the runes. How the hell are you supposed to learn?
Yeah.
Right? You're playing with a Nerf gun. Go play Nerf, go play war with a Nerf gun, because one day you might be at war, and when you're there, you're going to want to actually know how to manipulate a real gun when you get there.
Exactly. And by the time you know the runes enough for it to be a 50 cal, you know how to go down to the firing range too. Yeah. And do it in a way that's not going to hurt anybody.
Yeah, because
you have that knowledge. And you just, with enough practice and time, you
and understanding,
those skills.
and you develop that relationship. And like I said, with the runes, it's not about the individual rune all the time. In most of the cases, and most of the falls or the reads, it's about the relationship between the runes. You have to understand the runes, but the relationships are different. I could sit here with Sasha, it's a different relationship, right?
Yeah,
I could sit here with Skogul, it's a different relationship. Just like I said with Jafnhar and with Chris. Both of those, even though they're just men that I'm not related to, it's still a different relationship between us.
Yeah, because every person has different experiences.
Right, and they have different experiences with me.
Exactly.
So to Jafnhar, Bodvarr is different than to Chris.
Yeah.
Right? So Fehu might be different to you than it is to me. Because whatever it does represent, if it represents material wealth, what that looks like to you is different than what it looks like to me. So those runes are different, and their relationship to other runes is going to be different based on our own experiences too. Mm-hmm. So that's something you can't teach.
No,
you can
really
guide
can't.
And you can mentor, but people have to discover those things on their own, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's my key takeaway on the whole
some
rune
sweet,
thing.
Sweet knowledge, yeah.
Sweet knowledge.
So hope you enjoyed that, because there really isn't a lot of good stuff for runes out there. But
no, there's bits and pieces, and the problem with runes is that we don't really nobody that knows what the hell's going on is writing books about it, because they understand that there's damage that can be done. You know, even if you read through the sagas of the Icelanders and you read about a runic curse here or a runic curse there, even the composers of the sagas didn't put the formulas down.
Yeah,
they didn't write the specific runes. But you got to remember too that even the word rune in the sagas may not always refer to the runes. It may just refer to a secret, because that's what it means anyway.
Okay.
So it could just, rune could, well, it's literally that's what it means, but it could also be, in the poems, it could be a kenning for the word secret. Like he cast runes. He was telling secrets,
Okay.
You know,
That's
we don't
an
know.
interesting take.
It's just a way to look at it. It's just another way to just kind of interpret the stuff that you read.
Yeah.
That it could not physically be discussing runes themselves. It could just be discussing lesser known knowledge, secret knowledge, ancestral knowledge, family knowledge that not everybody is privy to.
Yeah.
Secrets.
Yeah, and runes, they're used different nowadays than they were back then. And I heard you speak on that before. With we have different uses for glass and steel nowadays.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with runes, because no one back then walked around with a bag of runes unless they were just some odd gypsy coming out of the forest, ass naked. But no one came around with bags of runes and just cast them and read them the same way we do today. There
is some discussion by Tacitus about them lopping off the branch of a fruit-bearing tree, cutting it into pieces, writing on these symbols.
And that's true, yeah.
And then casting them on a white cloth, which is why actually the rune sets that I build and sell on our website, they actually come with a nice a really dressy
very nice
white cloth. I don't know the importance of the white cloth, but why not, if it's already recorded and we understand that was a thing, why not just get closer? Why not just use a white cloth and then see if that makes a difference? I have a funny feeling that it's for visibility and cleanliness.
Visibility,
a clean white cloth isn't a dirty, nasty surface. It's a clean white cloth, and it's something you're probably going to care for and take care of, because it has value and it has worth. So it's really doesn't neither here nor there. But either way, our runes do come with a white cloth in the bag that we make. So
yeah, and if you've seen mine and Bodvarr's rune sets,
I don't think they've seen maybe in a TikTok.
Video like a TikTok or something like that. Very different. We definitely took that the fruit-bearing tree to heart, and for both Bodvarr and myself, we have our runes ordered out where if you stack them in order from top to bottom,
face up,
exactly, that you could build the entire branch back.
Well, at least the portion of it.
Well, exactly, yeah, the portion that you use the runes from. The point is that they're all in that order.
The order in which they grew.
Yeah.
According to the original Futhark order, which it may or may not be the true order. And then you can, anybody's best guess, whether it's Dagas or Othala is the last rune, you could do whatever you want.
Yeah. And then something that I didn't realize was very important until Bodvarr brought it up with me was the Galder staff that comes with it. And I actually haven't shown you mine yet, but I do have it in my basket. And I took the tip of the branch. So it's all the runes built up, and then it's the tip of that branch building the Galder stick.
Is too.
And that's the exact same
Mine's
as yours.
Mine's off an orange tree, yours off a plum, right?
Yeah, plum tree. Yeah. So, and it's not only, it's essentially just a long stick that has all of the runes on it in order. And the purpose of it is not only so that we have a quick reference, you can look at all the runes in order, maybe look at similarities between them. But for both yours and mine, it's small. It's almost like a pen, so you can do drawings in the dirt and stuff like that.
It's like a Viking stylus.
Exactly,
it's
yeah.
An ancient stylus. Yeah, you can draw stuff out on the dirt and stuff like that, and
yeah,
you can show connections between different runes on the thing. You can just use it as a pointer.
Whatever you.
And it's essentially a wand.
Pretty much, yeah.
So you could use it in runic work the same way you would use a hammer in a blessing ritual or anything else. It's because that's all a hammer is. It's just it's an energy focusing device, just like the magic wand. And I actually have a wand with an antler with a crystal on it and all that kind of stuff that I built because I thought they're really cool. But it's just a magic focusing device. So the Galder staff is the same thing. It's a magic focusing device. So if you're going to enchant things in runes, if you're going to do a runic amulet, why not draw it out with your Galder that lives with your runes anyway?
Exactly.
And it's got all 24 runes on it, and it's something that you've used, and it's kind of a part of your whole runic practice. Why not use that to draw out your magical symbol before you carve it or before you blood it or before you do whatever you're going to do with it, right?
Yeah.
So it's just one more tool, but you don't need any of it. You could go snap a branch off the tree, cut it up into pieces, and cast it, and then read it.
Yeah,
right?
You could, honestly. So, awesome.
Yeah. But I think we should probably wrap it up. We're still in the middle of a gathering here, and we broke away to do this, and then probably going to have to clean this mess up so we can do a summel out here. Right?
Oh yeah, we got some Viking group there for you to get through.
But yeah, it's been total cool. I've been wanting to have you on here since I started the podcast. So I think that your take on Asatru is unique because there's just simply not a lot of people who were born into it. There's a lot of people born into eclectic pagan households, and there's a lot of people, your mom's a witch or she's in this coven, or you've always been raised around druids or whatever. But when it comes to Asatru, there's not a whole lot of people who were born and raised in an Asatru family. This kind of always seems to be where people end up, not where they start.
Yeah, it really does. So, and maybe it's just our day and age. Perhaps it was something way back when, and I'm sure it was during the Viking Age.
Right.
But so we're adapting, and we got third generation on the way. So
yeah, that's awesome.
But yeah,
we have third generation born.
Yeah, third generation born, which with Ian.
With Ian, yes.
So,
which,
congrats again, Ian. If you made it this far, then let it be a shout out.
Yeah, right.
So, but cool. Yeah, thank you, Bodvarr, for having me on. So
yeah, man,
I know
we'll have to do this again. I
was supposed to be here way long ago. Merely, I don't know, about a month and a half ago. I was supposed to be on this, but things just got backed up. Other stuff got in the way.
Yeah.
And it was just wasn't the right time.
Yeah, but it worked out now, and then
exactly.
Course, eventually, you guys will meet all of our kinsmen, and I'm still trying to get Skogel to sit down, but she's real nervous about it.
Yeah,
I don't know why. Because she sees it, and it seems fairly refined, but she doesn't understand. But now you understand how easy it is to just sit down and talk about these things.
See, the trouble I was gonna have is in our headsets we can hear each other, so we get our audio right and stuff like that. But I always have trouble speaking over myself when I can hear it. But that's also just because anytime I ever did recording, it was always with poor equipment, so there was always like a little bit of delay.
Delays are horrible.
Oh,
yeah, you gotta take
me
up.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's no way.
With not having to worry about that. Sounds nice.
Yeah,
you still hear the fire crackle. I mean, that's always nice.
Real time, but it also cuts out a lot of the other background noise. And I can hear if the guy's running his chainsaw, or if the dogs are barking, or I can hear those things, so I'll know if I got to make some adjustments.
Yeah, it's really nice. So. Got a lovely setup.
So I guess this is it. We're going to wrap it up. We're going to see you guys again next week. I don't know who my guest is going to be because I haven't booked them yet. but most likely either one of my kinsmen, or I might just go back up to my office, sit with my green screen behind me, and pontificate on stuff as I often do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
come up with a couple new hypothetical heathens. So
yeah, a couple of hypothetical scenarios. Those are always fun. They get people thinking. So
yeah.
Until next week, I hope that you enjoyed the show. This has been Leif, my middle child.
Yep.
We didn't break the middle child. That's got to be something for us, right? Usually the middle child is a disaster. So,
usually, yeah.
Yeah.
So
we did pretty good with this one. And then, so I'm just gonna say, kick your shoes off, walk barefoot on the soil, get connected, get grounded, and have a good week.
Play with the runes. Have fun, everyone.
Play with the runes. Yeah, learn them.
There you go.
All right.